So good morning, everybody. Welcome. My name is Pim van Baarsen. I'm CEO for the Service and Technology Cluster. So welcome to this event, which is a special interest group event, this time for the Future Mobility Group. Before I hand over to Dr. Christiana Patri to run us through proceedings, I just wanted to give a very quick sort of overview and a bit of an admin briefing, if you will. So the special interest group under our thought leadership stream, we put together a special interest group around different areas of technology with the aim to bring like-minded people together to sort of share information, encourage collaboration, and really sort of hopefully advance the various topics. And for each special interest group, we have a number of champions. Christiana will talk a little bit more about the champions of this particular group. But the aim very much is to bring people together, encourage collaboration, and get conversations going. So that's why we're here today. So in terms of the running of today, Christiana is going to guide us through everything, but we'll and Trudy's just posted the various speakers and the various times as well. But what we really want to do is let the speakers do their presentation. We'll have a Q&A opportunity at the end of each presentation, so the opportunity for you to ask questions. I would suggest that for bandwidth purposes, it's probably best if we all switch off our cameras while the presentations are happening. And then if you wanted to ask a question as part of the Q&A, by all means put it in the chat, and then we can pick it up from there. Or just switch off on your camera and give us a little wave, and then we'll refer to you. You can ask your question in person after each presentation, if you will. I think, yeah, so as I said before, this is being recorded, so if you don't want to be part of the recording, then obviously switch off your camera and use the chat functionality and things. And that is really all from me, I think. So what we'll do very quickly first is I'll hand over to Talita, who is our sponsor for today. So we're supported by MPA Group on this event, and Talita is going to tell us a little bit about that. So over to you, Talita.
Thank you. Let me just share my screen. Okay. Can you see that okay? Great. So firstly, thank you for having me. I'm really excited to be here today. My name is Talitha. I'm a marketing manager at MPA, and my role really focuses on working with our partners, so understanding a bit about what their goals and ambitions are, and then getting to know their members as well, and seeing really how we can work together to add value for them. You might recognise the name MPA. We've been working with Silverstone Tech Cluster for a few years now, but I'd say over the last 18 months or so, we've undergone quite a few changes, and that's what I would like to touch on briefly this morning. So why do we exist? MPA is really here to support innovative UK businesses, really hoping to free up time for business owners and their staff to focus on their next big idea or developing their business, and kind of take away the stress of some of the day-to-day activities such as tax and accounting. Equally, we work to source funding for our clients as well, just helping them with kind of a cash injection to go into their next idea in the form of government funding like R&D tax credits or grants or patent box, anything like that. So how we're built as a company is quite unique. We have quite a few technical experts, so qualified people with backgrounds in engineering, manufacturing, IT, life sciences, and what that enables us to do is really understand kind of what's going on below the surface of these businesses, what are the struggles of business owners such as yourselves, and it really helps us to understand how we can then help them. So we've been going since 2007, so quite a few years now, and in that time we've built some really valuable connections with clients and partners, and where we can identify value in doing so, we're able to connect those different parties to work together. And finally, I think the biggest thing that I wanted to mention is the way that we've changed over the last 18 months. So we've gone from really focusing mainly on R&D tax credits to expanding our range of services around the needs of innovative businesses. So we've really listened to what our clients have said, and we've done some market research and come back and expanded our offering. just to really offer, I'd say, holistic support to businesses like the members of Silverstone Tech Cluster and like our clients. So we're really excited to be a bit more involved with Silverstone Tech Cluster this year. And hopefully we'll get the chance to work with some of you and you can see the changes for yourself. So yeah, I'll keep this short. Thank you again for letting us sponsor this event. We'll be at the annual conference next month as well. So hopefully, finally, we can meet some of you in person. So thank you very much, and I hope you enjoy the rest of the morning.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Lisa. Much appreciated, and thank you very much for your support. And I know that you support several other things that we do as well, and it's always much appreciated. So thank you very much. So right, over to Christiana to tell us all about future mobility and kick off the event. Christiana.
Hello, I hope everybody is okay this morning. I'm Christiana Pace. I'm the Director of Innovation Consulting, that is small firms in Silverstone that dealing with strategy management and sustainability, but also I'm one of the champions of the Future Mobility Group. And as Pim said, the Future Mobility Group is mainly a group to bring experts from different backgrounds together to encourage collaboration and knowledge sharing, mainly in the future mobility field. So I think that is quite self-explanatory. A couple of reasons why we wanted to call this event Road to Zero. I think Road to Zero is more and more using common language. First was introduced by the government as a strategy document for the transition to zero emission for 2040, but also now is very widely used for addressing a program of the United Nations. That is a campaign that is trying to get all the stakeholders like companies, city, regions, educational institutions to trying to reach a healthier, fairer, zero carbon world in times. For so 2030 and 2040 are the two deadlines that one's fixed by the government, the other one fixed by the UN, for which we should reach that target for addressing climate change. And I think with this year, COP26 being Glasgow and kicking off in November, we really wanted to try to do something to address possibility, challenges, and what other companies have done around this transition to net zero. We know it's quite scaring and it's not easy thinking about changing what we're doing and the way we're doing it, but I think through the different speaker, you actually realize that it's not that difficult and there is quite a lot of help, especially in the UK, to do that. So will be really a good, today will be a fantastic times to actually hear from the British Marine and what they are doing, from Innovate UK and how they can help SME and bigger company in the Road to Zero, from Aurum Energy and what they're doing for that, and from Magma and how they are working with OEMs on a range of topics that would enable this transition. So one other, as I said, like COP26 is kicking off in Glasgow in November, and but also the first youth forum for COP26 is kicking off this month in Italy. So we just thought that this was a really appropriate name to give to this to today's special interest group, to trying to bring people together on this journey, because you will hear that this term more and more. So I'm just going to leave the space to Ross now, that is the head of technical service at British Marine, that will share some insight into some of the technologies that the marine sector is developing for Road to Zero.
Good morning. Thank you, Christiana, and thank you for inviting me here today to share with you what the marine industry is up to. First of all, a quick apology. Unfortunately, I have had a technical issue this morning with my camera, and it looks like I'm in a 60s disco. So I'm just going to have to stay off screen, but I am going to share my presentation. So just going to share. Hopefully you can all see that okay. Excellent. Well, good morning. My name's Ross Wombwell. I'm head of technical services at British Marine. I'm just going to quickly run through who British Marine is. So we are the trade association for the UK leisure, small commercial and super yacht sector. We also operate Southampton International Boat Show. Southampton Boat Show actually starts tomorrow. So after today's conference, I'm heading down to the show to make sure that we're all ready and prepared. As a trade body, our primary objective is really to support and provide our industry with technical and regulatory information and advice. And as part of that, it's identifying future challenges and supporting the industry in trying to meet those challenges. And of course, one of the main challenges at the moment for many industries is looking at the road to net zero. We also provide stats, information, market trends, etc. We've got about 1,500 members in our organisation, majority of the UK's boat builders, second-hand yacht brokers, all the supply chain, the equipment manufacturers from engines through to winches, rigging, sails, etc. We also, within membership, support marinas, and we have the Yacht Harbour Association. So we're not just looking at the products themselves, but we're also looking at the infrastructure to support the transition. That's one of our objectives. Also within our footprint, we include our passenger boat operators. So those are organisations such as City Cruises in London, all the way through to the trip boats that you see heading out from various ports during the summer months, looking at nature trips, coastal trips, etc., and the hire boat sector. So that's kind of who we are. As an industry, we've probably got, like you can see there, about 6,000 businesses within our sector, covering about, including about 40,000 full-time employees. Generally, the revenue of the industry is just close to 4 billion per year. But from this, you can see that the majority of our companies are micro. So out of those 6,000, just over 5,000 are micro. So when we're looking at future, when we're looking at transition of technologies, these are the sorts of companies that need assistance, because they will not have the internal support structure, financial structure to enable a lot of R&D. So coming on to decarbonisation in the sector, earlier on this year, the roadmap for the decarbonisation of the European recreational marine craft sector was released by the Carbon Trust. It was DFT sponsored. As you can see from the title, they weren't purely focusing on the UK. They were looking at Europe as a whole. We may have left the European Union, but we're certainly still part of Europe. Within our sector, I think over 50% of our manufacturing is exported to the continent. And of course, boats move. So if we have a zero emission solution for the UK, it needs to be the same zero emission solution in the EU, because our boats will be going backwards and forwards across the channel. So the report has really identified 5 main areas of future technology that we as an industry will need to look into, identify the challenges, and then try and find ways and means of the transitioning. Primarily, as you can see here, the report focused on hull materials, technical design and performance. So those are 2 main things, in effect, very similar to other industries, looking at lightweighting and looking at how we can design our products, our vessels, to need less energy to do what they need to do. And then the report moved on to alternative energy, drivetrain hybridization, electrification, and finally alternative fuels. It's a fairly open report, very brief summary here, but I would certainly recommend, if you're looking at the marine industry, to download it and have a look. They really have identified the fact that, we are a small, we have a small amount of emissions from our sector when look at the whole. However, we will also have to play our part, as every other sector will have to. We also have really the identification of an additional risk, which is, our industry is really based on engaging and enjoying nature. So as an industry that is, pushing people to get out, enjoy nature, coastal areas, the sea, we need to make sure we are looking after that environment we want to enjoy. So, as part of it, we have a responsibility for our own future of the industry to ensure that the sea is an enjoyable place to be. Within our sector, there is going to be the need for policy and legislation, the placing of new emissions requirements, and also the policing of those new emissions requirements. So that has been identified that the political and legislative levers are going to have to be utilised where they probably aren't already. Again, they've identified we need to have a European solution, but also within the marine sector, there is no single solution for the breadth of the products that we manufacture. Our sector goes from the little rowing boats with a 1 or 2 horsepower engine, which may do an hour, maybe 2 hours a day, limited days per year, maybe 50 or 60 days per year, all the way up to the large power boats with literally thousands of horsepower of engines and a huge amount of fuel necessary to propel those engines. Some of our larger products have about 4,000 to 5,000 horsepower on board, 20,000 litres of fuel in the fuel tank. So they are large products. They need a lot of stored energy, and therefore maybe in the short term, certainly until other solutions are found, pure electric is not the answer for us. We will need to look at alternative fuels and maybe start thinking about hydrogen, which we're seeing coming onto the market at the moment. And this is really because of that need for energy storage on board. We also have a infrastructure issue, as do many industries. We find that the areas where our vessels are stored, where they're not used, marinas, boatyards, etc., are generally coastal, although we do have some inland marinas that supply the inland sector, canal boats, river boats, etc. But we're generally at the end of the line or away from where electrical infrastructure is already placed. So we do have to be very aware of the challenges of infrastructure moving forward with the new solutions. So here, this is just taken from the report. It really identifies the roadmap for the decarbonisation of the sector. As you can see there, the technical design, the alternative fuels, the electrification, and then the enablers. This is my role to support industry through engagement with organisations such as yourselves, but also engagement with government, understanding what support there is, both in R&D, but also what there may well need to be for consumer change. So the current alternatives, the ones that we're seeing coming onto the market at the moment, aren't just electric, although we are seeing some electric solutions. We are very closely looking at the development of alternative fuels such as GTL, gas to liquid, HVO, biodiesel, etc. We're seeing a number of hybrid solutions coming onto the market as a kind of a stepping stone towards zero emission. These are, traditional hybrids, diesel engines connected either in series or in parallel to electric propulsion systems, maybe with large battery support. We have their pure electric for the low usage vessels, and of course we're always keeping our minds open to alternative hybrids. Whether or not there will be fuel cell LPG or other areas that may well be developed in the future. As you can see, as I mentioned, electric only systems, we are suffering the same problem as the automotive sector, which is range concerns and our charging facilities. So what do we got on the market at the moment? We are at the start of the transition, and we do have some pure electric vessels out there. But as mentioned, the main issue we have is usage. Here we just have an example of the differences between what a traditional or fueled and a traditional engine vessel would do. This type of vessel will probably have a range of 350 nautical miles, maximum speed of around 30 to 40 knots. However, with the electric propulsion system, as you can see, the range is halved when the speed is kept to a 5 knot maximum speed. And then if you're looking to have a traditional powerboat speed up at around 16, 17, which what we would say is a planing speed, the range comes all the way down to 20 nautical miles. So that just gives you an example of the range issues we're currently facing with current technology in energy storage. Here's a larger vessel. Again, this is a fairly typical of our sector. This is the 48-foot flybridge from Greenline, manufactured in Scandinavia, I believe. With diesel propulsion, you've got a top speed of up to 30 knots with two 500 horsepower or 480 horsepower engines. And again, you probably have a range of around 400 to 500 nautical miles. With the electric propulsion solution, a 50 kilowatt electric motor, you're looking at 20 nautical mile range at 4 knots with a maximum speed of 6.5 knots. So again, there you can see the kind of issues that or the challenges, I suppose, that we're looking to find solutions for. We, of course, will have to go through the same process as automotive has over the last couple of years and really identify with our customers, what their needs are. And so one of the projects we're looking at the moment is data collection, just to find out how boats are used, so we can identify, in effect, what technology is needed to provide what our consumers are asking for. Whilst we're here, I don't really just want to look at the new boat market. I think it's really important to identify the existing fleet. Boats last a long time. The average age of a vehicle is between 7 and 10 years, is what the data tells us. Therefore, with the regulatory placement of the transition to zero emissions, such as the diesel and petrol ban in the mid-30s or in 30, you're looking at in effect a 40 or 45. Majority of the cars would be off the road with diesel and petrol engines, and electric will be there. With boats, it's a bit different. The average age of a boat is between 40 and 50 years. Some of our canal boats are well over 100 years, which means our existing fleet, which is up to 500,000 vessels just in the UK, will need a retrofitting solution to enable that zero net emissions by 2050. So we're not just looking at new products coming onto the market, we are also looking at the need for the production of drop-in solutions to the existing fleet. Meanwhile, what are we doing? So we're really focusing at the moment as an industry body on looking at life cycle analysis. We need to place an environmental value on ensuring that we're not changing things for a worse environmental impact. So, for example, a 5 horsepower engine, which we have many existing ones being used at the moment, going back to the 40s and 50s. Do we need to replace them with an electrical solution? When actually they're only going to be used 10, 15, 20 hours a year. Does the emissions level, or more emissions in the manufacture than there are in the usage of the existing? So we have to look at life cycle analysis. We're talking to the government about the regulatory framework. So we need to ensure that regulatory framework is enabling alternative power generation on board vessels and making sure that the rules keep up with technology. We're working hard, so I myself am the chairman of the British Standards Small Craft Committee, and we're looking at standards to enable our SMEs to transition in the short term. because they don't have the R&D abilities. They need standardization to support their technology uptake. We'd like, and we're talking to government about R&D funding, and of course we're keeping an open mind on the solution and the steps to achieve it. For us, this is just the start of the transition. We have a long way to go, and we will be working hard and working hopefully with organisations such as yourself to support our industry's transition to zero net emissions by 2050. And that's it from me. I don't know if we're taking questions now or if we're going to take some questions in a bit. Thank you.
Thank you, Ross. That was a great presentation, and I think it's like a one mainly that highlights one of the important aspects that we have been trying to point out for quite a long time, I think, in the automotive sector, that before changing things, we really need to know the impact. So life cycle assessment is definitely something that like great price to do that before changing things. Is like that is what you need. Just wanted to open the question answer for anybody that has got any question. Tim?
Could I ask one, please? So it all sounds very, very exciting, very interesting, and I should imagine that a number of the advanced engineering companies, because the industry seems quite similar in terms of the amount of SMEs, and it's predominantly smaller companies and things. But a lot of our guys are sitting here with sort of quite innovative solutions, maybe stuff that they've developed into automotive that could find an application in marine. How easy would it be, in your view, Ross, for SMEs that aren't currently working in marine but want to get into to the marine market? How easy would it be for them to engage? Is the marine industry quite open to look at outside solutions? Is it best to go through you? How would you go about that if you were an SME wanting to move into that?
Sure. Yeah. So the industry is certainly open to technology transfer. You know, beg, borrowing, and stealing as much as we can to help us on this road. And what we are certainly seeing is, you know, between our different businesses, we have I would say the larger businesses who are really, they're looking at developing internal solutions, and in the development of those internal solutions, they're looking to engage with people who have knowledge, who have experience in this area, to help them with their own development of new technologies. And then you have the smaller companies. The smaller companies are really looking at drop-in solutions. You know, they want a package that comes with everything that they can offer out, because the majority of our vessels, we don't really manufacture for stock very much. You know, we generally manufacture custom or semi-custom vessels. So there is the selection process, you know, and generally companies will take an order, you know, and then they will kind of manufacture that order. So there isn't a huge amount of, I would say, development for stock. It's more about finding the solutions which for the products that the customers want. You know, I am, you know, happy to support. I've been working with the MIA, the Motorsports Industry Association, over the last couple of years on technology transfer, and we've had some very good results where marine and motorsport have been working together on different projects, which is very possible. So again, I'm more than happy to work with yourselves on a similar, you know, identifying which companies need assistance, identifying which companies of yours can offer solutions that we're looking for, and putting these companies in contact so they can look to do some business together. You know, this is all about, you know, working to not only, you know, find the solutions to the challenges, but also you know, to provide business for our, you know, our members, but also your members as well.
Yeah, fantastic. Thank you, Ross. I already made a note that we should really have a conversation to see how we can do that and create opportunities for both our members. So we'll definitely be in touch. But thank you for that.
Thank you.
Anybody else have got a question?
I've got one, but should we let Denise go first?
Yeah.
Hi everyone, this is Denise from Northampton University. So my question is, thank you for the presentation, Ross. Charging facilities, I mean, that was interesting.
Easiest option is
there any
at the end of the meal, put on a credit card, and then
I'm just hearing some noise. Is there
Sorry.
any chance, yes, sorry, is there any chance you can explain what are the solutions for that? Because it's slightly different than automotive industry, I would imagine.
Yeah, sure, Denise. Yeah, so you know, we are going to have a very technical solution. So the technical solutions aren't going to be pure electric for the marine industry. We're also going to be looking at alternative fuels, be they you know, lower carbon diesel replacements, or be it, you know, hydrogen maybe in the future. At the moment, you know, we have a little bit of I would say a short-term issue in that a lot of boat owners are used to plugging their boats in when they get to the marina. You know, they unplug, they plug the boats in, they charge the boat batteries, which are generally the house batteries. You know, they're the ones that look after the fridge, the cooker, the air conditioning, etc. But the sort of charging requirements needed for onboard battery storage is a much different level than the 32 amp that we'll probably get out and you know, to charge house batteries. So we have a little bit of a separation between what our consumers think is possible and what actually is possible at the moment. So we're working hard to raise awareness, to educate. You know, we are generally at the end of the line of a lot of charging infrastructure. You know, we're at that end point, the marina at the end of the pier. So so we are looking at, you know, what support we can put in place for electrical charging. But at the same time, we're also having to identify the transition away from red diesel to maybe alternative fuels in the short term, you know, with a lower carbon footprint, and how our infrastructure can support different fuel storage and the awareness of what's necessary for the transition to utilizing different fuels. So, for example, you can't put a bio diesel in straight into one of our marine engines. Our marine engines are designed fairly high RPM, fairly constant loads, and would have to go through minor modifications to enable them to take bio. So we're working in all these different areas. But yes, infrastructure, you know, will be a big challenge for us moving forward, especially with multiple solutions on the horizon.
Thank you.
Any other question?
That was exactly the question I was going to ask a moment ago. So my question no longer stands.
I've got a question actually. Obviously, I think it's a really good approach what the marine approach is taking, rather than decide to go for a new solution and work out which infrastructure they need and whatever. You're actually going to put all the factor in to decide where to go next. But my question is, are you looking, so you talk about lightweights a lot, and obviously that is something that in the cluster, in the Silverstone technology cluster, lots of companies are working on, especially for automotive. So have you seen quite a lot of improvements with new materials because the main footprint, I guess, is the hull of the boat. So is there any advancement for the material for that part of the boat rather than just the propulsion of the boat?
Not a huge amount at the moment, to be honest. What we're seeing is where electric propulsion is being utilized as the main new propulsion technology, we're seeing, I would say, a different solution, which is the use of hydrofoil technology. So we're seeing a lot from Scandinavia, a lot of smaller, I would say, day boats, which are coming out onto the market with electric propulsion and hydrofoiling technology. We are starting to see our larger manufacturers thinking about lightweighting, but it's pretty tricky. These things are, they're luxury goods. You know, they have hardwood decking, you know, they have leather, they have all of these kind of plush materials. And so lightweighting technology is fairly tricky. The main hull, yes, is the main weight, you know, and at the moment we do have a lot of carbon fiber and Kevlar utilized in hull manufacture, but that's really for the more sporty vessels. The ones which go, I would say, above 30 knots, you're looking at 40, 50, 60, where the extra engine, or sorry, the light weighting is creating greater speed rather than lower fuel usage. But we are starting to see companies looking at what they can do to try and bring some light weighting into manufacturer. But again, I think the light weighting solution is going to come with the evolution of what alternative fuel we're going to be utilising. That's going to be it's a tricky transition for us with so many different types of product.
Thank you. And I think we got another question from David.
Yeah, hi. I'm David Bryant, working at Claytex. I was just curious as to your data collection, how you actually work out these ranges, top speeds and things like that. Is it purely from measured data, or are you simulating and working it out that way? Because I know that with the variety and massively different sizes and shapes of boats that there are out there, it can be very difficult to go, well, if you have this one powertrain, then it's going to be great for everything, but it's, you've got a lot of different varieties there.
Yeah, thank you, David. Yeah, no, it's a good question. It's actually something we've been struggling with for a while, to be honest. What we're doing is we're working with some of our manufacturers who are talking to their customers, trying to get usage data from their customers. So certainly in the canal boat area, which is the inland sector, which you're looking at, large, heavy vessels running with low horsepower engines, low speed, but quite a lot of hours. We're trying to get the data that way. With the other vessels, we're going out to engine manufacturers and trying to get the actual engine usage data. So they're anonymizing engine usage data from their own data collection, and they're going to be sharing some with us, and that will give us an idea of the types of usage. We also have the discussions we have within industry. I think it's fairly well understood that most pleasure vessels are used around 100 hours a year on the engine, and the commercial use, so these are kind of like charter hire pleasure vessels, it's around 200 to 250 hours a year. So we've got a rough annual hourly usage, which is kind of an industry point, but what we don't have is the variations within that hour. How much of it is at full load, how much of it is at tick overload for getting in and out of ports, and that's the sort of information we're gonna try and source over the next year or two, so we can help identify the relevant solution for the different types of usage.
Great. Any other question? I think
I have my hand up very briefly. It's John at Semlet. If you have time, shall I come in with my question?
Yeah, just go ahead. We can take one last question.
Thank you. Okay, I was just curious, sort of using the analogy or the comparison with the automotive sector, government have tried to change our habits through a mixture of policy and carrot and stick, i.e. incentive or taxation. Is the same thing happening in the marine sector? Are you getting either incentives to move to greener solutions or penalties for whether it's the propulsion system or the operating system on the boat? Is there a similar happening for marine?
At the moment, no, but they are discussing it. I think one of the things we have in the marine industry is that we are almost unregulated. We don't have vessel registration, which is mandatory. So there is no identification of who is causing the emissions. One of the things that we are talking about with them is how exactly they're going to enforce new emissions regulations, which we certainly expect when we don't have any registration. It's quite tricky for them. It's quite tricky for government at the moment. What we are certainly seeing in the discussions that I'm having with government is an understanding that at the moment we have, I would say, emissions are built into our product safety regulation, so they're point of sale. So we are seeing tightening up of point of sale emissions rules, but with such a long lifespan, as I mentioned, 40, 50, 60 years, how are they going to affect change in the existing fleet? I think regulation is going to start at some point. What we're also, we've been fairly successful recently with maintaining the use of red diesel in the pleasure fleet. which is something that we've worked extremely hard with. So we've kind of managed to push back an increase in taxation, I suppose, through fuel taxation, through the transition from red to white diesel, in effect because of our infrastructure. So I can see things changing in the future, but it's going to be a lot longer timescale than it is within the automotive sector.
Thank you. John, do you have any other question for Ross, or was that?
No, that was great.
Okay?
Thank you. I wasn't sure you could squeeze me in. That's why I took my hand down. Thank you.
It's okay. Thanks, everybody. And thanks, Ross, for the presentation. It's very interesting what the marine sector is doing. And I think everybody can have a think around that. And the next speaker is Dr. Alistair Barnes from Innovate UK. Is the innovation leads for the zero emission vehicles, and is going to talk about the opportunities around the road to zero, and highlight some challenges and some support as well that Innovate UK can offer.
Right, good morning all. Thank you very much, Christiana, for that introduction. Let me just get my slides sharing. Okay, hopefully you see that. Someone tell me if they don't. I just before I start off, I'd mention I've been off sick this week for a couple of days. You can't see my very swollen ankle from where you are, but I've thrown this together in a bit of a rush, and apologies if there's any typos or anything in there. I've done my best. So today I'm just going to start with, before I really introduce myself, I'm going to talk about Innovate UK and then sort of drill down to me. Because I think that makes a bit more sense in terms of explaining the story. I'll then talk around the road to zero, some things that we're doing at Innovate UK, some that you might not expect, and some examples of funded projects just to give you a bit of a feel for what is out there and what is happening. I'll then talk a bit about sort of the options in innovation funding in automotive, and a lot of my slides are quite automotive focused. I'll talk about some current funding opportunities, and then we'll do a Q&A on those slides. And then following that, I'm hoping to have a bit of a sort of discussion, if we can, around the key challenges that people think need to be addressed to achieve net zero. So do sort of think about that as we're going through, and prepare a point, if you can, to mention. So to start off with, UK Research Innovation is the parent organisation for Innovate UK. So UK Research and Innovation it's not a government department, it's a sort of government-owned company. It includes 7 research councils, so these would maybe fund universities, and then the total budget coming through UK Research and Innovation is around £7 billion a year. And then Innovate UK sits within that. It was previously known as the Technology Strategy Board, and it drives productivity and economic growth, and it supports businesses to develop new ideas and potential and realize their potential. So whereas some of the parts of UKRI are a bit more focused on funding universities and funding academia, Innovate UK is much more business focused. And we are sort of known as the UK's innovation agency. As I say, it's the heart of delivering UK R&D expenditure to businesses. Part of our mission is in funding, but then another big part of our mission is in connecting businesses. And we know there's a lot of value in making sure that people are talking to the right organisations, and there's often a lot of synergies and sort of shared benefit that can be realised just by making introductions. So that is, for the taxpayer, that is very good value for money, but I think it's also very valuable for businesses. And just to try and make it a bit more tangible, I've put the corporate slide on all the different things we've done over the last 14 years, that is. So a cumulative investment through Innovate UK of around £2.5 billion, possibly more by now. And then we are effectively subsidising or supporting industry projects. So that £2.5 billion comes mostly from the taxpayer, and then the match funding adds 4.3 billion. So it is leveraging what is already happening in the private sector. But the good thing here is that this adds to the UK economy through sort of business growth and export sales and things like that. So for every £1 that we invest, we have about £6 or £7 that goes into the economy. This has a huge impact on jobs, and we've got a figure here of 70,000 jobs in total. And then on to me. So as I said, my title is an innovation lead for zero emission vehicles. And I have a technical engineering background. I've worked in batteries and in aerospace and in additive manufacturing or 3D printing. So I'm a technical person behind zero emission vehicles, as opposed to, say, a project or a program manager. I design funding competitions that would help deliver funding to businesses, and then I make those networking introductions that would help businesses connect and grow. I lead on programs for the Department for Transport on zero emission road freight. I'll talk about that in a bit. And I also work closely with the Advanced Propulsion Centre, delivering the Automotive Transformation Fund. And then in my immediate department, we have a lot of people who are working on areas such as rail or marine, and then connected and autonomous vehicles, on and off vehicle technologies, so maybe charging or motors or vehicle to grid, and then things like multimodal or connected transport or micromobility, that sort of areas. So in terms of organisations that we work with, we work very closely with the government, of course. So we have this sort of arm's length relationship, but we're often involved in delivering government interventions, such as policy commitments like those that were mentioned in last year's 10-point plan for a green industrial revolution. And we help connect government to business and make sure that the government is fully informed with the needs of businesses. But we're not responsible for writing policy, although maybe we would influence it. So things like the phase out of internal combustion engine vehicles, we would be involved in those conversations, but it's not a sort of Innovate UK initiative in the same way. So we work with all areas of the government, but particularly the Department for Transport and the Department for Business, Energy and Industrial Strategy, sometimes known as BEIS. We also work very closely with the catapult networks. So these are really interesting organisations that are very valuable, and it's worth finding out about the relevant one and getting in touch with them. They help to bridge the gap between academia and business, sometimes known as the valley of death, and a huge amount of expertise. For example, I work closely with the Connected Places Catapult, and they do a lot of work on sort of looking at freight and looking at how freight is moved up and down the motorway and sort of opportunities for businesses, and trying to get sort of the newest technology from universities, but trying to get those delivering an economic benefit. We also work closely with the KTN, or Knowledge Transfer Network. Now, this is a particularly useful organisation for the people who I think who are here at this event today, and it's well worth going on the website and setting up a call and having a conversation. They are the network partner or networking partner for Innovate UK. They help businesses to connect together, and they help form sort of consortiums for projects. So if you think you've got a particular niche that you are excelling in, and you're looking for somebody to sort of work with and help exploit it, it's really worth getting in touch with KTN and having those conversations. It's very difficult to understate how useful they are as an organisation, and all their support is readily available and free. So definitely take a look. And then in terms of the road to zero, I suppose the term or topic is very much in vogue at the moment, but I think that is, for Innovate UK's sake, that is largely irrelevant, in that it was something we were very much focused on beforehand, and it really consistently comes across as a theme across lots of the things we do. As you might be aware, it's featured strongly in the recent, I think back in July, the UK government's innovation strategy. And we're expecting, I think, a net zero strategy from government over the next couple of months. And we fund thousands of projects in this area. And then as maybe a slightly left field example, another resource that I think is particularly valuable to people here is the recently published Innovate UK Transport Vision for 2050. So this looks at the future of transport. It looks at where we think transport will be in 2050 and then the steps along the way. And we've looked at 6 different areas of focus. So travel and transport demand, connectivity, energy vectors, autonomy, business models, and infrastructure. And within that, we've looked at how the transport will change, which will help people look at the opportunities and risks for the UK. As an example, hydrogen is talked about very regularly, and we've tried to put down in numbers to the best of our ability how many vehicles we think will be using hydrogen, or how many aeroplanes we think will be using hydrogen. So that will come under energy vectors. And we've also looked at transport demand. So we would be able to say things like, we think that bus use will gradually increase or gradually decrease over the coming years. So if you are an innovator or if you're a small company, this would be really useful in kind of sound checking your ideas in the sort of future market. I think it's a great resource. It's been really extensively researched. We have a lot of experts from Innovate UK and from industry who fed into it. And we're also looking for feedback to keep the vision updated. And then we'll soon be following this up with a publication on supply chain benchmarking. So we're looking at, say, the supply chain for batteries, how much funding is going into it, how many companies of different size, the revenue of those companies, number of patents, things like that. And we'll be looking at that for the UK and comparing it to other leading nations. And it will show sort of where we have strengths and weaknesses, and again, where those opportunities are. So UK Transport Vision 2050, really useful resource. It's only got about sort of 10 pages of quite detailed content. So it's something you could flick through, or it's something you could spend a couple of hours really digging into. And I think there's a lot of interesting content in there. So maybe something a bit different to what you could expect. Okay, and then we've also got an example of funding that we have that's available in any sector. So the smart grants are kind of open to all, and it basically goes down to the best applications and best projects that have the most potential to change the UK. So those are very much a lot of the funding that goes through those goes towards sort of net zero related topics. Okay, I mentioned the Department for Transport, and I've mentioned freight a few times. So one of the things that I'm working on personally is the Zero Emission Road Freight Trials. It's a £20 million programme in this year, and that includes projects which are looking at putting hydrogen trucks onto the road and also electric road systems. So trucks powered by wires generally overhead. And we've also got some projects in there about supporting uptake. And this programme is, its ambition is to have these technologies trialled on the road in the coming years. HGVs are a particularly difficult area to decarbonise, and this programme is looking at the solution for that. And now I've just got a couple of quick examples of funded projects, just to try and give you a feel for what is out there. So the supporting uptake of battery electric trucks, mentioned a moment ago. This project is quite a large project. It's £10 million, and this is going to put 20 commercially available battery electric trucks, as pictured here, in service with the NHS and various local authorities. So those operators will currently be using diesel trucks, and they will switch to these zero emission trucks. So it's kind of like a sudden influx of new technology. They'll install all the infrastructure that's needed. So they will basically go from being traditional organizations to living the life of zero emission vehicles, and all of that learning. Sorry, I was muted. I think you can hear me again. All of that learning will be used to assist the fleet operators and public sector and private sector organisations around the strengths and challenges and deployment options for zero emission trucks. We've also got hydrogen refueling. So this is a much smaller project with a smaller company, around 30 people, and the organisation is less than 10 years old. And it's a 9-month project with about 250,000 total spend. It's looking at hydrogen refueling. Now, people are excited about hydrogen because it has the ability to refuel a vehicle very quickly. It's not quite as straightforward as some people make it sound, in that you have to cool the gas significantly to do that refueling. And you can end up with a big reliance on having chillers to cool the gas, and then you're using extra energy to chill all the gas, and you might have to wait between refuels as your system cools back down to the appropriate temperature. So this organisation has got a very innovative approach that they think could result in a lower cost hydrogen refueler with less moving parts and less requirement for chilling. And they are doing a technical feasibility study funded by Innovate UK, looking at that innovative intellectual property, and they're going to do some modelling and prototyping work and see if it's something that they can pursue further. So we're de-risking that, but it's an important project with potential. Another one is this £1.5 million project to look at the feasibility of a UK Gigafactory. There's an organisation that we're looking at building a Gigafactory in the UK amongst other locations. And a project like this would look at the manufacturing processes, the raw material sourcing, energy costs, and help to generate a business case. And I'm pleased to say that for a relatively small investment in the sort of looking at the feasibility of this particular factory, it was announced back in July that this particular sort of next stage would go ahead and the factory would be built. Okay, so I want to talk a little bit about the sort of options for funding, particularly in the automotive sector. I've got a slide in a second. It's quite busy, but it tries to kind of look at the different options, and it doesn't have everything on it, but I think it's probably one that could be useful to some, and it could be worth screenshotting if you want, and annotating, taking some notes. And then I'll be looking at some examples of some current funding that is available. Okay, so on this slide, we have at the top, we have different columns for technology readiness levels. So we have low technology readiness levels on the left for concepts and research. Then we have in the middle proof of concepts, and then we have scale up and manufacturing. So starting on the bottom of this slide, we've got the Faraday battery challenge. It has the Faraday Institution, which looks at sort of fundamental research on batteries. And then we have the UK Battery Industrialisation Centre, which is a sort of pilot line for testing battery formulations. And then we also have UKRI on the left, and then the different organisations which might fund universities. And in the middle, we have OZEV funding, such as a recent programme called Transitioning Towards Zero Emission Vehicles. And previously, we used to have the IDP programme. So that's funding through the Office of Zero Emission Vehicles. We have lots of funding through Innovate UK. We have the Niche Vehicle Network, which looks at some sort of more unusual vehicle types. And then in terms of scale up, the Advanced Propulsion Centre is an organisation that's partnered very closely with Innovate UK. They look at some large funding and some scale up opportunities. And then the Automotive Transformation Fund is a particular fund for capital funding, so big investment funding for significant sort of expansions to manufacturing capability. We also have the Driving the Electric Revolution Challenge, which looks at power electronics, machines and drives. And we have the Freight programme with DFT. Okay, just moving on. I'll just turn off the laser pointer. Okay, I won't turn off the laser pointer, I'll leave it going. Current relevant opportunities, smart grants I mentioned earlier. very competitive program looking for game-changing technology. That's open at the moment. You can see all of these on the Innovation Funding Service. So if you Google that, you can see the current funding that's available. We have the Ofgem Strategic Innovation Fund, which looks to partner licensed energy organizations with SMEs and academics. And they have a whole area of this new £450 million fund on zero emission transport. So maybe if you think you could help an organization in the energy space here, then you could get in touch with the Knowledge Transfer Network and see if there's anyone who's looking for anyone to help on that sort of project. And then we also have Horizon Europe, which is it's a European Union funded initiative. Now we are still very much eligible for this. It's got quite a few different bits of funding in the area of zero emission vehicles. They have some different avenues. So some of those are for lower technology readiness level, some of them are for higher technology readiness level. But the important point here is it's for large international projects. So there is also the opportunity to kind of collaborate internationally and grow those international links. If you want to find out more about those, you should contact my colleague Louise Mothersole. Her email address is plastered all over the internet for these types of inquiries, and she is the person to speak to. So in terms of questions, I'd be pleased to take questions sort of on the slides I've gone through, but I also want to have a bit of a discussion around challenges on net zero. So if we start just first of all with questions on the slides I've gone through, I think that would be perfect.
Great. I think it was a great presentation. I'm a big fan of Innovate UK, and I suggest to all of our clients normally to just have a look at your website, and what you're doing is amazing. And the Knowledge Transfer Network, I cannot prize them enough. They're really, really good for advising. And so I would remark to please, definitely everybody tries to, if you got an idea, trying to get in touch. And as you said, it's like any question on, it would be nice to know about challenges or what people have uptake or gone through. So anybody has got any question? I guess if nobody has, oh, okay, Denise got a question, great, please.
Hi, it's not on the presentation slides. Thank you, Alistair. It has been great. It's just the challenges that I think Alistair and you want us to discuss about. My question is around that, or just one challenge area.
Okay.
Is it? Okay, so sorry, yes, I'll wait until. Can I just talk about the challenges?
Go on. If there's nothing coming forward, we could let's focus on challenges. Yeah.
Okay, so the biggest challenge, I also come from engineering background like you, Alice. So I have worked in automotive sector, so I can see the changes. As from the business side of things, it's relatively okay, but I just see the biggest challenge coming from consumer side. And that's where I think myself and my colleague at Northampton University are focusing on consumer perspective, particularly young consumers and how they see electric cars. But I just went through a social experiment in a way. I just told a few friends and also very technical people that I want to buy an e-car. And the reaction I got from people, either they are very knowledgeable or just, is very negative. So most of them say, no, it's not quite advanced yet. And the technical ones are explaining, and the biggest technical challenge is coming from actually Ross went through. Normally you have a car which goes around 9-10 years if you keep it for that long. And with normal engines, you can actually keep it that long. Whereas with the electric cars, with the battery, you need to change it because of battery or any electric device you bought. And the replacement cost I've been told is around 8,000. So if you're looking for the customer perspective, it's value for money. That's what the customers want. So if you're paying quite a high price, which is still high for electric cars, then you have to replace the battery. That is a bit of a challenge. I'm not even talking about the charging facilities. I think infrastructure is another worry. But the value for money seems to be the issue. And, you know, there's such negativity among consumer base. I mean, people are up for all this, you know, environmental issues. They are aware, and these are the people who are aware of things. But it's just this negativity. I think this is the biggest challenge.
So I would agree with you, Denise. I would agree with you in terms of public perception being a really big hurdle to overcome. It's something I see quite regularly, and I guess it's probably worth for disclosure just saying I have an electric car. It's not a particularly fancy one. It's not a Tesla. It was expensive, but I absolutely love it. It's much nicer to drive. Charging is not really a problem in that it takes a couple of seconds to plug it in at home, and then it takes a couple more seconds to unplug it at home, and that's less time than I spend ever going to a petrol station. I think really the public perception is just lacking. Lagging a few years behind the technology, and certainly some of those points that you make were true with early electric cars, maybe models that came out 5 years ago, but the models that are coming out today are much better. They are still expensive to buy, too expensive, but their batteries are sort of thermally managed a lot better. They are not wearing out after 8 years. You're not throwing the battery in the bin and spending £8,000 on a new battery. It just isn't happening. The technology has moved on a really long way, and I think there is a really big challenge for government to overcome to explain to people the reality and the current state of this technology, and encourage uptake. As a very brief example, my next door neighbour has seen my electric car and asked me some questions about it. And then a couple of months ago, he's got one himself, and he's pretty happy so far. It's taken a bit of adjustment, and we live somewhere with driveways, which makes it much easier to charge them. But I think people are slowly coming around to it, and people are changing their minds. I'm quite optimistic. These things take time, though.
Yeah, I mean, we have to remain optimistic. It's just I'm just thinking about the time frame, because it's 2050. So, do you think that the all mind changes will happen in 25 years time, or is it?
Denise, can I add one thing? There's like there is also companies like automotive companies that are changing their business model. For example, I know that Nissan, you can bring back the battery, and Renault as well. You can bring back the car and you can change battery, and it will not cost you very much after 3 years. So I think it's more like automotive companies understanding what the customer is worried of and change the business model. They have been working with the ICE engine. So in respect of your question of will it change by 2040, definitely will change, but because the business model that the car company where you buy a car now operates will change, and we can see visible change, especially in Europe, because the battery is something that the manufacturer is responsible to dispose of and not the customer. So they are accountable for that. I think in England, there is not yet a clear policy on that, although since 2014, the government is working for creating one, but will come here as well.
And both of you, do you see some changes for the housing industry as well? Because I think Alistair mentioned about charging at home. I think there were discussions about how houses should be suitable for electric cars to charge, or some sort of charging station in front of the house.
I think we'll have someone after, actually Lawrence will address this with his presentation. Right. So that will be quite a good, interesting discussion to take it from there.
All right, thank you.
Alistair, if you want to say anything, this
we can always come back to it later. I'm keen to see what the other speakers have to say on that topic.
Yeah, hello.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah. So nice to be here. Very nice discussion so far, Alistair and Christiana. So, well, to add to what Dennis was asking as well, I think when it comes to cost, with using EV cars, I think the costs are also significantly lower. I think to maintain. I mean, I think Alistair alluded to that as well. And I think when it comes to the cost of the vehicle itself, which are still very expensive, based on my experience and what I've seen in the industry, because I follow it closely. I own a Tesla. I don't own a Tesla, but I follow Tesla significantly. So I know that they are trying to make $25,000 cars. And all other vehicle manufacturers are also making commitments 2025, 2030 to start manufacturing or to make their EVs the mainstay. So I think that could be that could drive a race to zero event where everybody wants to reduce the cost of the cars. So I think the costs are going to go down significantly over the meantime. My question goes to my point of discussion actually goes to hydrogen. I think the economics of hydrogen using as alternative fuel the economics are not there compared to EVs. So I wanted to ask about, because that's a challenge on itself. So I wanted to ask about what are the progress that you've seen, Alistair, in terms of making this more economic. I know companies in the US like Linde and Plug Power are doing a lot of things on this in this area, but I've not seen so much in the UK. But I wanted to ask about your experience when it comes to the economics.
Sure.
Yeah.
So hydrogen economics. Hydrogen is a really interesting topic because it gets so much press, so much attention, lots of pressure from industry, and but there's not that much of it actually happening yet. There's lots of discussion, but not that much on the ground. The economics of hydrogen are a big problem, mostly because of the efficiency of making the hydrogen and then converting it back into electricity. So whilst you can use it and you can refuel quite quickly, it is quite expensive to kind of do. And for passenger cars, it just doesn't really make sense. It's too expensive. You'd end up needing a lot more renewable electricity to make the hydrogen than you would for electric vehicles, which just doesn't make sense. But for some other automotive applications, like maybe big excavators or heavy goods vehicles going down the motorway all day, the economics may work out. It's just about matching that use case with the kind of offering that hydrogen has.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other question? We are conscious. I think Pim has got a question, but we are conscious that we are a bit out of time, so we'll get Pim question, and then we'll see if everybody wants to go ahead or to have a smaller comfort break.
Yeah, sorry, I'll keep it fairly quickly. So Alistair, kind of coming back to your presentation as a whole, because I thought it was very interesting to sort of get this overview of where to go. But very briefly, if I was a company looking for funding, what are the first steps? What are the best steps? Who do I ring? How do I most quickly get to because it's a complicated landscape out there. So how do I most quickly get to the relevant spot for me?
So I think I'll come back to my KTN slide. Christiana agreed with me. I think so you want to look on the Innovation Funding Service, which is quite easy to find, and it's you can Google it or you can go on the Innovate UK website, and you want to see what's out there. But I think really you want to have a conversation with the KTN. It's very easy to have an idea in your mind, think it matches up really well with a particular funding option, and then spend a lot of hours writing an application and put it in, and then and get sort of a poor score through the assessment and not be successful. It's quite easy to kind of think that your idea is perfect for the funding opportunity. The KTN will give you a really balanced view as to whether or not what you want to do fits well. And they'll probably help you sort of mature, and they'll probably help review your application, things like that. So the KTN is a kind of first point of call, and the most important place to go to is definitely the answer for me.
Excellent, thank you.
And I think one of the other things from the KTN, they also trying to organize group to discuss what people need and what they don't. So you can find a partner that you can be a partner in a project that you got capability for, and they are lacking in that project, that capability. So it's definitely a very great, the first port of call, I would say, that they're a great team.
They run events, they run webinars, they have a mailing list. Sign up, take a look at the website. It might feel strange for me to kind of recommend a separate organization, but they're that good that it would be silly not to.
Good. Great. So should we just take 3 minutes comfort break, if that's okay, and then we still have time for the next presentation? Is everybody okay with that? And be back here for, well, I may give you 5 minutes, not 3 minutes, but just don't be late, please. See you shortly. I'm not sure if people are back or they're still having their coffee breaks. Team is back.
I'm back. And people have been chatting as well, so hopefully there's still a reasonable crowd. But
good. Let's wait another 1 minute for everybody back, and then we'll start again. If you are back, please raise your hand or put something on your a reaction on things, so we know that you are all back.
Yeah, and we're getting some comments in the chat as well. I think we're looking pretty good, to be honest.
Good, fantastic. So I think we can introduce our next speaker, Lawrence Bradbury, and he's the director of Urium. I hope that I pronounce it correctly. So that is a well, I guess I let you, Lawrence, I let you to introduce the company as well. So it's possibly everybody's got a better introduction of what I could give.
Sure. No, absolutely. Fortunately, I think my first slide probably sums it up in a heartbeat. Yeah. So yeah, I mean, we're basically solar installers, but we've got a large pedigree in energy monitoring and management. But we work with actually typically quite normal people, and you know, there's a groundsway, I think, of people that are prepared to vote with their feet, and the business owners and individuals to actually remove their carbon footprint. So what I wanted to do today was to sort of take you through like a customer journey. As you can see in front of you, that's a kind of typical customer meeting. That's our car park with a customer meeting. But I mean, most of the people that we work with, they're generally well-to-do, but they're not billionaires. You know, they're generally in relatively good jobs. But I think there's a lot of people out there that understand that this climate emergency is an emergency, and that we need to be making, you know, inroads quicker than we are today. And I personally think that solar is kind of part of the answer. In fact, is probably a good part of the answer, especially in the UK. But I mean, we'll step through that. But this is the vehicle of the guy whose case study we're going to go through. He's a little bit of a show off, and you can't actually get a Tesla in gunmetal grey, so he's obviously had that modified. And turning up to our customer meeting is our technical manager, Simon Linton, who's in a slightly more modest form of transport, the Renault Twizy. So if we go back to, you know, this is a typical 4-bedroom semi-detached house in Basingstoke, and the owner of the Tesla Model X wanted to try and mitigate his household energy consumption. As you can see, there's a number of elevations. Most people would probably look at that roof and say it's not particularly good for solar energy generation. So there are actually at least a couple of half decent surfaces there where we can get some decent solar panels on the roof. But this particular customer decided that well, actually, I'll tell you what happened. So basically we installed 50%, or rather we put solar panels on the 2 elevations that I just showed, the 2 good looking elevations, and there's no energy storage on this graph, but this is typically what happens when you install solar on a property that's got no energy storage. So that you'll see in red is consumption from the grid. That you'll see in blue is solar energy that is consumed by the house or the car, if you're fortunate enough to have an electric car, and then the green is the export energy which goes out to the grid. And so you'll see really, you know, 30-35% of what's been generated on this particular day has gone out to the grid for other people to consume and pay their their meter operators. And I think the key thing about this is really the revolutionary aspect that storage has applied to solar. So there's lots of people that had solar installed in 2011, 2012, 2013, in the early days, where there were quite a lot of government subsidies available and were quite lucrative. But once you apply storage to something like this, you can pretty much change the dynamic. So you can see that we're really now, once you've added storage, you're running overnight from the storage. And I mean, we're still exporting some energy here, but you know, you can literally take any given property and size correctly, apply energy generation and storage, and literally reduce its carbon footprint by around 75%, which I think is huge, actually. So I mean, we're always remarking in the UK about how you know, how bad our weather is, but actually it's not really. It's not really, I mean, solar generates even on cloudy days. It may not be reaching the peaks that you'd see, you know, on a nice bright sunny day. Obviously, bright sunny conditions are the best conditions that you can get. Albeit you do get sometimes some fall off from if panels get a bit too hot. But generally, the climate in the UK is very conducive to generating solar power, and you know. So after we got to that point with this particular customer, he then decided that he wanted to put solar panels on all the aspects that we wouldn't normally recommend. So, I mean, that the aspect that you can see there now is actually kind of a northeast facing aspect, but believe it or not, it still does about 60-65% of what a southern aspect would do. And this particular customer wanted to try and get as net zero as possible, and we ended up putting solar panels pretty much everywhere that they could go on this customer's property. And obviously, once we had some more generation, we needed to add some more storage, and that sort of pretty much combined then to give you this kind of view, where typically you know, on a nice summer day, we're generating about 50 kilowatts of power, which is, you know, it's enough to fill quite a lot of electric cars, and actually we're not putting that much back out on the grid, but we're completely reducing carbon footprint and allowing a means for electric transportation. Now that's obviously much more in a sort of you know, summer environment than it would be obviously in a winter environment. But you know, this is a typical sort of distribution of the solar energy that we get in the UK over any given year, and really from, I would say, sort of March, even February through to October, there can be sized correctly enough energy generation to take people's properties off grid, which I think is absolutely phenomenal, really, when you think about it. And then obviously, then we get the November, December, and January months where, you know, days are very short and the sun's very far away, and we get a lot of clouds. And during those months, we typically end up combining a tariff to allow the energy storage to be topped up by grid energy. Now, obviously, we're going to need other forms of generation or an awful lot of solar for that to kind of work in the winter. But obviously, we've got some other technologies such as wind that we tend to get quite a lot of in the winter, and I think a lot of the electrical meter operator companies such as Octopus, E.ON, EDF, OVO, British Gas, they're actually now starting, or they have put lots of electric vehicle tariffs on there, because they can see that there's going to be a market to use the grid to charge electric cars, and it's actually quite astounding at the difference in the plans that you get now. So I think Octopus were probably the first with their EV Go plan, which is 5 pence per kilowatt hour of energy at midnight 30 to 4:30 in the morning. And then just to sort of contrast that with OVO Drive, which I was looking at the other day. So they advertise a low pence, a low rate all day at 16.37 pence. So I mean, most customers that we do solar for will have an off-peak tariff, either like Economy 7 or some of these electrical vehicle tariffs are ideal to charge batteries up. And I think EDF have got a pretty progressive tariff where they do 3 different tariffs. They do one called Go Electric, which is kind of like it's like OVO Drive. It's like the same price all the time. I think it might actually be 17-18 pence, so not cheap. But I think when you start to look at what's going to happen to energy pricing in the next year, 2, 3, 4 years, there's obviously a move to try and use tariffs to guide customer behavior to use energy from the grid when it's cheap. But I mean, obviously, if we're all charging our cars overnight, I suspect that overnight energy will not end up being all that cheap. But you know, we really need to invest in the generation that goes with it. So I think one other thing I really wanted to talk about was there's a trial, a virtual power plant trial going on with Tesla and Octopus Energy at the moment, which is basically those customers that own Tesla Powerwalls basically hand control of their batteries back to Tesla, who manage this plan. Octopus administer it, and Tesla actually are developing the smarts to effectively reduce the use of fossil fuels during peak times. So I think in America they're called peaker plants, but basically when you know, if you're watching a football match and it gets to half time and the kettles go on, then some quick use energy needs to be spun up. But this trial really is going on, and in exchange for giving control of your battery to Tesla, they give you a flat rate of 11 pence per kilowatt. 11, but it depends on where you are in the country because there's distribution costs, but you get a flat rate of between 11 or 12 pence per kilowatt at all the time. So it's not an off-peak tariff or anything like that. It's a tariff you can get even between 4 and 7, believe it or not. Although I think generally they're intending that people will try and reduce their use of grid energy during times when fossil fuel is being used. This rate has recently changed. It used to be as cheap as 8 pence per kilowatt, but yeah, I think they probably realised that they were doing it far too cheap. And then one other very interesting tariff that Octopus have been pioneering is something called Agile, that there's been quite a lot of airplay around recently, and this is in conjunction with a smart meter, a tariff that changes its cost every 30 minutes. So there are 48 30-minute time slots throughout any given day, and this particular graph is actually Tuesday's energy and energy cost. And I mean, there's a lot of people that you know, probably 2 years ago when this was introduced were actually making massive savings. The original intention was that between 4 p.m. and 7 p.m. would be the peak rate, and everything else would generally be off peak. But on Tuesday this week, we had a beautiful sunny day, but there was no wind, and we rely quite heavily on wind power these days. And the lack of wind had basically hiked the price of wholesale energy on this tariff. I will hasten to add, it's not specifically the wholesale tariff, but the wholesale tariff is driven very much by the natural gas price, because we use a lot of natural gas to create electricity. So on Thursday, if you're on this tariff and you didn't have a solar and battery, you'd be paying a significant amount. I think I calculated I would have been paying almost £9 just for my energy that day. But correspondingly, Octopus also have something called outgoing agile, which is actually where you're being paid for putting energy back out on the grid. Now, unfortunately, it's not quite as lucrative as their 35 pence deal until you get to sort of later in the day. But probably I should just go back and say that the 35 pence here is actually an artificial cap that Octopus have put on the tariff to encourage consumers to take it out. So that this agile Octopus is actually indicative of wholesale electrical rates. So this is what you would be paying. So I mean, if you look at probably about 6:30, 7 o'clock on Tuesday, we would have been paying in the region of about £650 per megawatt, which is, if you look at the price, typically somewhere be about £80 per megawatt. Here maybe it's £100 per megawatt. But I think at the margins where we do have contention for energy, I think energy prices are definitely on the up. And so much so that this is actually the breakdown of the energy use on Tuesday. And we actually had to fire up some coal-powered plants which hadn't been used for months, just to take some of the load. But you can see from this particular breakdown how much of our energy is still generated from fossil fuels. So we still have quite a long way to go. I happen to think that solar and storage is a large part of the equation. And then obviously in the off months where we don't generate much solar energy, then you can always buy a share in a wind farm if that's what you want to do, because we typically get a lot of our wind during the winter period. So that's it. That's it from me. Any questions?
Thank you. That was a really good presentation and good to know. I think possibly Denise could could ask the question that she was asking before about energy. Oops.
Yeah, I think the question was the changes in the homes, the design of homes based on charging electric cars at home. I think that was the discussion. I've seen the documentary on TV about how it's going to affect the housing industry overall. I think Lawrence touched upon.
You mean to provision sort of driveway parking and that kind of thing in terms of?
Yeah, I mean they were talking. The discussion was some of the homes. You see a lot of old houses in the UK still valuable.
Yes.
But how we can actually keep those homes as keeping characteristics, but some of the changes that are required for electric cars and how we can charge them, because I think overnight charges, as you talk through, require some infrastructure at homes as well. So maybe there are some changes required for the new homes as well as old ones.
I mean, there's an awful lot going on with electric vehicle charging at the moment. There's a number of trials. I'm sure Alistair's probably aware of a number of trials with sort of grid balancing, and a lot of electric charge points now have load curtailment. So and I think, you know, as a technology opportunity, this managing of the grid. So Tesla have this platform called Auto Bidder, which basically it's their broker platform for energy. But I could see that be extended so that, you know, grid balancing, using electric cars to actually supplement the grid if we need to, and reduce load on the grid at times. I mean, you know, it is a major transition. I mean, Alistair, you can probably talk about how great it is to not have to go to a petrol station.
Yeah, I guess with Denise's question, I've got a couple of thoughts, and I'm trying to sort of collect them briefly. But you can, of course, charge a car off just a normal mains socket. It takes a long time. It takes really quite a long time. Obviously, if you're not actually doing that many miles in a day, it doesn't matter. But if you're out all day doing a long journey and then try and plug in overnight, that could be a problem. But if you've got electricity, that is always an option. The next step up is a sort of a wall box type charger, which is the same amount of power that a electric shower would use. So it's not normally a problem to have those installed. They're nothing particularly complicated, and there's a grant that sort of funds that for people who've got driveways and can have a charger installed. Then the next option is a sort of a rapid charger, which is the sort of thing that you could find at a motorway service station or maybe at a big supermarket. Now, people don't get those installed in a house. It would be very expensive and be excessive. So it's not really a huge problem if you've got a driveway to get enough charging at your house. If you haven't got a driveway, it does get more complicated. There are lots of trials around sort of on-street charging of electric cars and plugging into lamp posts and things like that. But it is very fair to say that it's more difficult at the moment.
A lot, yeah. I think, yeah, certainly flats, and I mean, the real question in my mind is whether or not we will just quickly hop that and get to transport as a service eventually. You know, we might leapfrog that whole problem of charging electric cars and then just all subscribe to a transport service. I think that potentially could be an answer to that problem.
Maybe.
Any other question?
Hi, it's Philip Wiley here. Maybe I can answer or ask a question. It was really just about whether or not solar panels are ever going to be designed to really fit and look attractive with buildings, because at the moment an awful lot of them are not very attractive, and I think that puts a lot of people off.
Sure.
And, it wouldn't seem to be beyond the wit of man to design something that looks a bit more integrated, and I suppose it depends if you get in there early with the designer and the developers of the houses.
Sure. Yeah. No. I think in roof is typically what's done at the moment. So you basically use the solar panel as part of the roof structure. But there are, in fact, there have been solar roof tiles for quite a long time, but they're very, very expensive, and they also don't generate very much. Tesla have a product which they released in the US that they're now trialing in the UK. So yeah, I mean, I definitely, I think it's coming, and I think the advantage of using glass is probably that it's actually more durable over the term. I mean, I think, you know, typical solar panels are warranted for generation for about 30 years. I think solar roof tiles, I'd have to check what their warranty is, but I wouldn't be surprised if it's not more like 40 or 50.
Okay. And that's
So
probably as long as a roof would last, or at least a slate one.
Yeah, no, definitely. I mean, for sure. I mean, it's definitely coming, but it will be quite expensive. It will be quite expensive, but like any new technology, once we start to get mass adoption. I mean, I think if I were to build a house now, there would be no other choice but to invest in that kind of roof.
Can I just add one thing? And it's kind of like, sorry to jump in, is a personal project. We are trying to build an house off the grid at the moment, and it's kind of like we have been investigating quite a lot of options for the roof. And I agree with you, like solar slates, what they call it, are quite expensive. But if you go in Europe, they are less expensive because obviously they use it more because they got more sun than us. So that's quite a common things to incorporate that in the roof. And also I think there is one component that they've got that is quite difficult to find. That's why they cost more. But another option that lots of buildings, especially buildings that need refurbishment, are adopting are like vertical solar panels.
Yes, right.
They actually generate less because they are vertical, but they look much nicer, especially in like in buildings that need refurbishment outside. So
there's even solar paints that they've been. I mean, the yield is fairly low. I mean, a typical solar panel is probably at 21% efficiency, and solar paint is probably at 4 or 5%. But if you look at how far we have to go in order to generate zero carbon energy from the sun, I think that there is definitely room for a number of different solutions.
Any other question? Okay, so if there is no more question in the audience, I think thanks again for Lawrence for the presentation. We're just going to jump on our last speaker, that is Philip Willey from Magma International. I don't know, I leave Philip to introduce himself.
Okay. And can you see my screen? Because I'm not seeing any. I've got two screens open, so it's not quite that.
Yes, thank you.
You can see it. Okay, excellent. Okay, what I wanted to try and sort of cover today was not just the road to zero, but the road to business, because at the end of the day, I think we all agree probably that people are out there to make money and to try and develop businesses, not just to create a potentially attractive products, but it's actually getting them to market that will change the world. So this is a bit of our experience, I suppose, at Magma and over the years at various organizations that I've been at, is translating from a bright idea to a commodity product is not that easy. So I thought it would be interesting to just run through some of our background and some of the things that we are doing and some of the things that I think people should try and bear in mind when they're trying to develop newer businesses. At the moment we're working with quite a number, but we'll talk about that as we go on. Let me see if I can get it. Yeah. So maybe if I can just introduce myself first of all, and then I'll introduce Magma International, and then talk a bit about positioning products and services, getting in front of key decision makers, and ensuring you can deliver and have the funding, and how to avoid some of the traps that particularly the automotive industry seems to put in place of startup businesses, and indeed any business, because we can give you some examples of large businesses that have also struggled, frankly, to make money in the industry. In terms of my background, I'm an engineer by training originally, and worked in the aerospace and then the oil services sector. I then took a bit of a mad diversion and became a journalist, but there was a link. It was an engineering magazine called The Engineer, which probably a few of you may know, and I ended up as assistant editor there. I then took another fairly major leap and moved into financial services and became an equity analyst. And at the firms that I was at, which were fairly big global firms, I ended up covering the automotive sector, and advising on stock recommendations and covering both the OEMs, so all of the big vehicle manufacturers, and the tier ones. So it was a fairly high pressure job, but a lot of fun. I did a lot of traveling. And after probably 5 or 6 years at that, I shifted into corporate finance. I got bored with talking to the same people or different people with the same story all the time, and wanted to do more project-related work and deal-related work. And corporate finance allowed me to do that. And I ended up working for, again, a number of fairly large organizations, UBS, PwC, and then most recently Houlihan Lokey, before setting up Magma International. And Magma we set up 7 years ago. And I'll give you a bit more insight on that as well. So I've got about 30 years of automotive M&A experience now, advising companies buying and selling, more selling than buying, because that's a more sure way of actually getting a fee at the end of it. But I've been on both sides, so it's been an interesting career. When I'm not working, I'm also a bit of a petrol head, and if I can get it to the next one, this is one of my cars. I've got a couple out on a recent rally, and I enjoy that. It's a complete escape. You can't think of work when you're pedaling around the roads in a rally car. So it's fun. Going back to Magma International, we co-founded the business with another couple of guys, Martin Leach, who unfortunately passed away in 2016, and Andrei Kasparek, who's actually online as well, in 2014. And the real aim of the business was to set up something that really focused on the automotive industry and giving advice from people who had been there, done it, and had senior level experience. So all of us had been involved in the industry. Martin had been a very senior director at Ford. Andre had been both at Ford and Visteon, Premier Automotive Group, Volvo. I'd been in the banking sector, and we also had other colleagues that we brought in alongside us as well, who had been in various banks and automotive companies. And together we'd all done more than 50 transactions spanning all areas of the industry, from design engineering right through to sales and marketing and service companies, and everything in between, from widgets to metal castings. And clearly the key we felt to getting things done, and this applies not just to selling businesses but also to developing them, is collaboration, and collaborating with specialists who can bring deep knowledge and expertise, and do the things that they do well, but leave the other things to other people. So it's I suppose it's splitting and focusing on your strengths and trying to get over your weaknesses. And we've managed to complete quite a significant number of assignments and have a pretty healthy pipeline at the moment as well. This just gives a sort of a flavor for the type of companies that we've worked with. You'll probably know some of them, but there'll be a lot of them that you probably have never heard of. One, for instance, is Berry, which is a very large global in fact, it's not an automotive group as such. It's a plastic specialist, and focuses more on the consumer products, bottles and packaging. But they had and have some automotive operations, and we recently sold one of those for them. And then there's companies that you will recognize like Fisker and Neo and Gaz, maybe from Russia. We also partner with other banks and with other advisors, such as Houlihan, where I used to work, Regions, which is a North American bank, and Grant Thornton. So it's a collaborative approach that we take to everything that we do, and try and bring value. Moving to, I suppose, what it is that I suppose most of the companies here that are actually trying to produce products and services, what they're trying to do is sell those at the end of the day. But I think it's very important for everybody to stand back and to benchmark their business against the competition, know your strengths, and particularly know your weaknesses, and build your USPs. We've seen umpteen cases of businesses where we go in and people really don't know their competition, which is terrible. It's quite easy to find a lot of information now on the web, and to build a clear picture of what the competition looks like. And obviously knowing your own strengths and weaknesses is pretty important. With Magma, we're currently working on a whole host of earlier stage situations with a number of companies, and that spans everything from intelligent range prediction for electric vehicles, and that's pretty important because most of the vehicle manufacturers are very poor at estimating the range, and it's one of the key issues that buyers have is range anxiety. And if your range keeps telling you the wrong thing, it's not going to encourage you to either buy the vehicle in the first place, or when you have the vehicle, to like it. So I think it's something that there is a great market for. We're also working with a company on the manufacturing side that does predictive maintenance monitoring for production systems, and uses artificial intelligence to do that. Again, making plants efficient is pretty key. And this particular company is a big supplier into Nissan, and they've done extremely well helping Nissan to improve its overall productivity by making sure that things, they know when they might be going to break down, and they can intervene at an early stage to avoid a breakdown. And they can also avoid unnecessary maintenance, just in case maintenance, really. We're also working with a foam technology business that helps to improve seat comfort, and also, interestingly, lowers the weight of the seat. And they've been already pretty successful in the aerospace sector, getting their product into aircraft, where weight is obviously key, but it's also pretty key in the automotive sector as we get to electric vehicles and try and get improved fuel economy and electric range. We're also working with a bipolar battery business that increases power density and helps also with longevity. The batteries will be guaranteed for a long period of time as well. And we're also working with an autonomous driving technologies business, particularly for commercial vehicles, where we think there's a particular need for autonomous driving, and also for safety systems for commercial vehicles, whether that be vans, buses, or trucks, and to be able to, I suppose, design those specifically for those vehicles is important. And it's an area where some of the bigger companies aren't really focusing on. They're looking at the high volume automotive sector and maybe not doing so much in the commercial vehicle area. So a lot of interesting projects that we're working on. In terms of what we think you need to do, and getting in front of key decision makers, it's often easy for engineers to get in front of engineers and to be comfortable with those. But I think the key is, have those engineers that you're conversing with, have they got an interest in protecting something? maybe their own positions or the technology that they've developed in-house. And also, are they going to make the final decision? I think often it's not the engineers who make the decision, and we'll talk about that as we go through. It's also, I think, important to understand who needs you most and where can you gain quick wins for business. It might be that you want to get onto high volume vehicles, but actually you may be better off going for the lower volume, higher quality vehicles first of all, where one, they can afford to pay more for your product, and two, the risks maybe in terms of volumes aren't so high, and you'll be able to produce at the right level. But I think the key thing here with decision makers and with companies is getting high level support at an early stage is really important when implementing new products or technologies. It'll be the CEO who will have to fall on the sword if something goes wrong, if the product kills someone, if the product fails in the marketplace and the product and the vehicle gets a poor reputation. So getting as high a level of support as you can is really, really important, and convincing the CEO and other board members and advisors to the board that you're credible is and worth backing is what will make life much easier at the end of the day. So I think it's important to try and elevate your conversations, and not only that, it's I think very key in the automotive industry in particular to demonstrate that you can deliver and have funding. Often companies have great products and great ideas, but if they can't bring them to market, or if the vehicle manufacturer is concerned about your funding, they'll just not take the risk. They'll go somewhere else. It may be, as a result, important to have a partner, and you not to be aiming for the tier one, because becoming a tier one is not easy, and it has a lot of risks, both for the company and for the customer. And OEMs don't tend to take risks with their supply chain. They like to have things that are easy to manage, and don't keep them awake at night, because one component can stop a whole production line. The other thing that's vitally important, we feel, is to understand your funding needs. It's very easy to think that you can buy components or buy raw materials at fixed prices, and then when you come to it, you've mispriced or you've miscalculated, and also it's easy to run out of cash. Cash is a scarce commodity in smaller companies, so you need to carefully manage your funding, and also to ensure that you have backup funding should you need it, because it will take you a long time to get your product from the design idea through into production. If you're going after the larger vehicle manufacturers, it's 3-4 years in all likelihood. So you need to plan to get from A to start a production. You also need to understand where you're going to get the money from, and it takes a long time to raise money. In our experience, 6 to 12 months to raise any sort of serious amount of funding, and even if you're talking in small numbers of millions, it can take a similar amount of time. And specialists who can help aren't for free, so you have to figure out a way of incentivizing them and potentially and ultimately paying them for the help that they give. In terms of avoiding traps and things as well in the industry, we've seen umpteen cases of businesses where they have a really good product, and and they know what the product can do, but they don't understand the value of the product to the end customer, whether that be the vehicle manufacturer or the end user. And if it saves weight or allows you to consolidate other products or functions, there is a real saving there that the vehicle manufacturer or OEM can gain, and that's worth something. So you need to be able to understand what your product does and how it impacts everything else around it, so that you can really price that properly. If you're dealing with OEMs as well, you will have to get involved with their purchasing team, and getting this done early is often a good thing, because you can clarify early any issues, understand how they're going to potentially try and price the product, and how they're going to negotiate. We've seen situations where companies have been involved with OEMs. They've made proposals to maybe a local contact. The local contact has sort of indicated that it's okay, and then all of a sudden it goes up the line to the group, and you suddenly get the group purchasing people involved, and you enter a whole new set of negotiations, and suddenly what you thought was a very profitable situation turns out to be something where your profit margins are being squeezed. There are also traps that we see time and time again, price downs that are expected maybe by the vehicle manufacturer, but they're expected because the purchasing team gets rewarded on price downs, and often they're unrealistic, and they shouldn't be accepted, even though they will claim that it's common. It may be common, but it's a common way of getting into a situation where you end up with an unprofitable business. And we've also seen situations now for volume, where volume discounts erode your profits over time, and there's no reason for it really, unless you can get economies of scale, and you can get economies in your production. And contracts also can limit your options, limit who you can sell to, limit your escape from potentially unattractive agreements within the contract. But there are also opportunities, and I think you need to take those into account. The non-financial benefits, as I mentioned before, of weight and modularity, ease of introduction, durability, and customer perception are all really pretty vital for the OEMs, and taking advantage of those is clearly what you want to try and do as a supplier. So hopefully that's not teaching everyone how to suck eggs, and has been of some interest. And I think I kept pretty much to my time as well.
Fantastic. That was a fantastic presentation, and especially timing is great. We're doing really well for timing, I have to say. So I just wanted to open the floor to question. I think it was a really interesting one, so I'm sure we'll have lots of questions now.
Can I start, please, Christiana?
Yes.
Very interesting presentation, Philip. Thank you. One area that I kind of like to explore is when we did an event the other month focused around the defense sector. One of the things that was raised that with a number of contracts, certainly with government, but also with defense primes and things, the importance of suppliers to have in place things like sustainability policies and gender equality and diversity policies and those sort of fluffy things, if you like, is becoming increasingly important. Is that something that you're seeing as well? And is that potentially going to make the difference in terms of winning contracts and getting engaged or increasing the value of your company? Apart from, of course, helping to recruit the relevant people.
Yeah, I mean, sorry.
Can I just say something to Pim? I need to work on your language. They're not fluffy things, they are needed things now for the recency.
No, you're quite correct, Christiana, and I do apologize. Sorry.
Yeah, no, I think you're right. Yeah, there is an increasing requirement for some of the things that maybe weren't required in the past, and in particular, I suppose that relates to things that affect the environment, but also I think also HR policies that you have to have in place, anti-slavery, etc., etc., are going to be important because we've seen it in the retail sector and clothing. Companies can get into all kinds of trouble if they support people that don't do the right thing. And I think in some cases now, I've seen it in the commercial vehicle sector, for instance. The operators of trucks are being pressurized a lot by their customers, whether that be the retailers or building companies, that they have to meet more and more stringent environmental legislation or environmental standards. In fact, not legislation, really standards that they're setting. And they're setting what they now call gold standards for their suppliers, and their suppliers have to prove that they meet those standards. So life is definitely changing. I think for earlier stage companies, it's maybe a little bit less of an issue, but when you're getting into the larger organizations, it most certainly is.
Well, I suppose even for the startup organizations, if you start with it in mind, then it'll be that much more easy to implement sort of going forward, right? So yeah. I don't think it's something that you should just go like, well, we'll do that in 20 years time when we're big, because you might not get big if you don't have that in place from the outset.
Yeah, no, that's right. My colleague Andre is on the line as well. I'm not sure if he's turned on or not at the moment, but he's got experience of what the purchasing people within large organizations, how they operate, and I'm sure if he was able to speak, he could give you some examples of things that he's seen. But I've definitely seen that it is becoming more and more important, and the big OEMs will certainly look very closely at their suppliers and make sure that they tick all the right boxes and none of the wrong boxes.
Can I just do a parallel with the motorsport industry, for example? There is a lot of tenders that the FIA is bringing out that from last year you're not able to apply if you don't have environmental credential. So that is an industry-specific environmental credential. So it's not the ISO 14001, for example, but it's an industry-specific accreditation for the environmental credential, and that is the trend that is taking them now. So I think ethical policy and environmental credential are very much on the motorsport agenda as well. And if you want to participate in tender, your company, how little or how big it is, need to have that credential. And I've seen with OEM myself as well, where you get a form to onboarding as a supplier, and there is a massive list of requirements for, I think they are very onerous in startups, but I agree with you, Pimi, if they can be addressed from the beginning, it makes it easier.
Yeah. In tender processes, now there can be documentations inches thick to go through. It's not easy.
Hi, it's Andre. I've been listening to what Philip said. I just want to make a quick statement and say that pretty much every single OEM will have massive set of rules for prospective suppliers. So you will need to fulfill pretty much all leading edge requirements that are seen as world class, especially by all the bigger OEMs, that you essentially have no chance of becoming a supplier until you fulfill all those requirements. So I think it's absolutely key, and onboarding takes a long time, and it takes a lot of forms and checking, and it's a nightmare, especially for smaller organizations, because they assume that they don't distinguish between big and small suppliers generally. So you have to do the same paperwork if you have 5,000 people and supply, many OEMs, or if you have only 3 or 5 people who have some new technology gadget that you're trying to offer to the OEMs.
Yeah, that's often why it's easier to be a tier 2 or tier 3 supplier than necessarily a tier 1, because becoming a tier 1 is not an easy process, and yeah, there are huge hoops to jump over, and huge risks for the OEMs if you're a tier 1 and you fail. Yeah, that can stop the line, can stop production, and cause all kinds of major issues.
We got a question from David. David, do you want to?
Yeah, hi. I've been trying to work out the best way of, from a consumer's point of view, actually trying to make the decision between different vehicles. Because at the moment we've discussed a lot about the actual use element of a vehicle and the amount of energy and carbon it's producing and reducing that down to zero. But from a consumer's point of view, that's all they're presented. From a full lifetime of a vehicle point of view, it would be very useful and informative to know the full carbon emissions from production of the materials through to recycling or disposal of components at the end. Can you see any potential litigation or government interaction to actually force OEMs to produce a full lifetime carbon output for, let's say, a vehicle of its first 150,000 kilometers, or whatever the metric best suited is, so that customers can have a good, well-informed choice between car A versus car B?
Similar to what we see with refrigerators and things, you mean?
Yeah, exactly. It's the full lifetime rather than just this amount of miles per gallon, this amount of carbon, things like that, which, especially in transitioning from petrol and diesel cars over to electric cars and through hybrid vehicles, that comparison of just the driving time of the vehicle emissions really muddies the waters for actually making a properly informed decision about which is the most economical car, oh sorry, environmentally friendly car, I think is the best way of putting it.
I know that certainly for batteries, the vehicle manufacturers have to have a specific plan now to recycle end of use batteries from vehicles, and we know of one company that's actually developing usage for those batteries, and is being funded by a partner of ours that we work with on a number of projects. So I think it is it's already here. Vehicle manufacturers have to also I think undertake to recycle most of the vehicle if required. I suppose the issue is, when is it required and when does that really kick in? I'm not sure about the legislation. Maybe somebody else has some ideas.
Just one thing about life cycle assessment, because we do quite a lot for the motorsport industry, but we do quite a lot of them. It's kind of like there are a lot in the space of automotive, but they're more voluntary, like Toyota has done some, and there are quite some good one. I think the life cycle assessment is something that is more the company want to do to guarantee the customer that they are doing everything they can to be environmental friendly, rather than the government is mandating. So the government is mandated for some parts of the cars, but it's more like the company, for acquiring the trust of customer, are trying to do it so that they kind of the customer has got the confidence that they're doing their best. And at the moment, I would say Toyota and Renault possibly are leading that space. There is not much out else there of other cars company, but it's just because I think they're a bit behind that path. But that's my personal opinion, I would say. But I'm seeing more and more consumer products that are not cars that actually are requiring a life cycle assessment, and the motorsport industry definitely is on that path. They need one, and we got quite a lot of customers that we serve in that.
hope you don't mind me adding something to this point, because I think it's really interesting. So two quick points to mention. One is that the Polestar, the Geely Volvo sub-brand, do a life cycle assessment already. I'll put the link in the chat in a second. They do that for their electric car, which is, I think, made in China. It's interesting and it's quite accessible. It's worth a look. Obviously, that's not quite the sort of whole market approach you would like, but I think it has sort of turned quite a lot of heads and maybe will push people in that direction. The second point is that I know VW and other OEMs are now, as Philip says, pushing their tier one suppliers very hard now in terms of showing their carbon emissions and their net zero plans for their component production. I wouldn't be surprised if that is going to sort of push them towards also publishing data on that topic. So maybe it'll be voluntary from OEMs, but I do expect that sort of information is gradually going to come to consumers, and I'm all for it. I think it's great.
Thank you, Alistair. I completely forgot about Volvo and Geely, and Volvo is, and like Polestar obviously been of the group, and Volvo is the most sustainable. They got a sustainable supply chain working group since many years now. So they've been trying to do everything to reduce their carbon footprint. Yeah,
and they're talking about it a lot. I think other OEMs are doing it, but not yet talking about it. So I think it's going to happen.
I think that's open another topics, but I think we are a bit too late to talk about it. So maybe it's going to be another topics for another interest group of the future mobility group. But is actually disclosing what people are doing. And I think that is a problem in our industry, like automotive mainly, but also in motorsport, is kind of like reporting on the good things that people are doing for the environment, for driving down the carbon footprint, for life cycle assessment. So that is another topics possibly, because I think people are kind of scared in reporting what they're doing, although it's a good things reporting, because then if there is problem with collaboration, they can solve these problems. And hopefully we'll see more of enforcing the reporting of carbon footprint on components or on cars or life cycle assessment. We'll see what will come, but that's obviously will only happen if someone mandates it, because people are very uneasy on publicizing the data and be publicly scrutinized on them. So I think, thank you, Philip, for the great presentation. And I think we are coming to the end of the day. If anybody else got any other question that want to ask, we can possibly take one extra question, but that's about it.
Hi, it's Andre. If I could just make a statement rather than a question. I don't think the industry will change dramatically, because there is no car that is environmentally friendly, because it still relies on fossil fuels, however you cut it today. And I think the real change can only happen if the ownership structure changes. Because if you look at statistics, on average, person uses a car 4% of its lifetime. So if we are, as consumers, change to sharing cars and relying on basically leasing cars, especially ones that can just come without a driver to you, pick you up and move you to the right place that you want to go to, that's where you're talking about a massive reduction of carbon emissions, whether it's electric and it's fossil fuel driven today, or whether it's ICE or whatever engine you have. So this will not reduce until we completely change our way of dealing with cars.
Yeah,
just what I leave this for you to think about until.
No, I agree, and it's a nice thing to throw for the next. I think the discussion of what's the next topic should be of the next future mobility seminars, I would say, of conference or.
Yeah, I was just about to say, Christiana, that obviously one of your fellow champions in this group is Chris Kirby from Tomorrow's Journey, which is very much something that they've been looking into and looking at sort of whole vehicle occupation and really upping that percentage. So yeah, it's very much part of the mix, and I do agree with that. And Roger Atkins from EV Outlook is one of the champions as well, and he's kind of said before that, if all we do is replace all petrol cars with all battery cars, we're not improving the problem at all. Arguably making it worse. So yeah, it's very much part of the solution and the discussion that we need to move to. So yeah, I completely agree with that.
Yeah, I think another thing as well that's going to happen soon is the focus on emissions going to come towards other areas of the vehicle, like tires. Particulate emissions from tires is arguably a very big issue. There's a group called Emission Analytics that's done quite a lot of work in this area.
They spoke at one of our events previously, so we.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, tire is definitely, particulate is a big problem. I think the UN and the UNICEF have highlighted that numerous times this year already. So, and we just had the UN Day for air pollution and breathe air clean, and so there was quite a big focus on that. Yeah, I think I'm just throwing the last things out there for the next the next meeting, but then after we really need to wrap up. And I completely agree about different models that need to change if you want to reduce emission, about electric cars. But I'm a big fan of sustainable fuel as well. So net zero fuel, how they're going to call that, is something that Formula One is developing to try and to put in other things. Is as Pim said, if we're changing all our cars to be electric, great, we don't have any more CO2 emission, but we actually create lots of footprints producing the car. So why not keeping the old car running, but with a fuel that is more sustainable? So maybe that is kind of like this, and the other things that we have addressed is something we have taken notes for the next meeting that we're going to have over the next couple of meetings, because it's quite a large things to address. So I just wanted to thank everybody for being with us today up until the end. Thanks everybody that make it to the end, and thanks for everybody that have been here. Also thanks to all the speakers. I think we had some interesting mix of conversation and a lot of questions. I think Alistair has put quite a lot in the chat, so if you want to take some notes, and I think all the speakers are reachable anyway, if you have got any question for them or afterthoughts or anything like that. But we hope to see the speakers again in one of these groups, so we can continue the conversation going, because it was definitely a really good day. Tim.
Yes, no, thank you, Christiana. I echo all of that, of course. Yeah, so in terms of the contacting the speakers and things, we will be sending an email out to everybody, which includes a link to the presentation. It will also include the contact details of the speakers, so there's going to be plenty of opportunity to follow up. Obviously, this video is going to be available on our YouTube side as well if you want to rewatch. So yeah, so many thanks to all the speakers. Many thanks to Christiana as well for guiding us through really, really good stuff. I'd also like to thank Talita from MPA for supporting our event. It's always much appreciated, and I do encourage people to have a look at what they do and see how we can help you. And when we send you the email and we give you the details to follow up, by all means, please reply to us and let us know what else you want us to talk about. Right at the end, we got some really interesting topics that we're definitely going to take forward into events. But we here as the STC and definitely with all our special interest groups, we're here to bring people together and to make sure that people talk about all the stuff that needs to be talked about. So get in touch with us. Let us know what else you want us to cover. Let us know what else you want to hear from, so that we can look and make sure that we bring you the most relevant content. So please get in touch with us, liaise with us. And and let us help you. That's what we're here for. And so with that, I think we'll leave it there. But thank you all very much for participating. I hope you all enjoyed it. I thought it was very informative. So thank you very much. Enjoy your lunch, and we'll hope to see you for the next one. So thank you all very much.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks. Bye-bye.